All right,
Gotta,
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting session of Story Fellowship. We are currently reading Rick Riordan's The Hammer of Thor, a Magnus Chase adventure, and our esteemed leader and reader, Dennis Jones, will take it away. I think we left off just finishing chapter 25 at our last session, so we're just going to read the tail end of 25 to reestablish where we're at and then get started on chapter 26. So take it away, Dennis.
Andvari, I asked. She nodded uneasily. This is his name. This is his name. The careful one. In the old language, and this dwarf lives underwater. In the shape of a fish. No, and the dwarf lives underwater. In the shape of a fish, said Inge. Oh, naturally. Hearthstone signed to Inge. How do you know this? I. Well, Master Hearthstone holder still have some nature magic. We're not supposed to use it, but I sensed the dwarf the last time I was in the woods. Mr. Elderman only tolerates this patch of wilderness on his property because, you know, Holder need a forest nearby to survive, and he can always hire more help in there. She said hire. I heard catch. The 10-minute cleat stomping session was sounding better and better. So this dwarf, I said, what's he doing in Alfheim? Doesn't the sunlight turn him to stone? In's cow-tail flicked, according to the rumors I've heard. Andvari is over 1,000 years old. He has powerful magic. The sunlight barely affects him. Also, he stays in the darkest depths of the pool. I suppose he thought Alfheim was a safe place to hide. His gold has been stolen before by dwarves, humans, even gods. But who would look for a dwarf and his treasure here? Thank you, Inge. Hearth signed. The Huldar blushed. Just be careful, Master Hearth. Andvari is tricky. His treasure is sure to be hidden and protected by all sorts of enchantments. I'm sorry, I can only tell you where to find him, not how to defeat him. Hearthstone gave Inge a hug. I was afraid the poor girl's bonnet might pop off like a bottle cap. I please, good luck. She dashed off. I turned to Hearthstone. Has she been in love with you since you were kids? Hearth pointed at me, then circled his finger at the side of his head. You're crazy. Whatever, man, I said. I'm just glad you didn't kiss her. She would have passed out. Hearthstone gave me an ir- irritated grunt. Come on, dwarf to Rob. Dun dun dun.
That's funny.
26. We nuke all the fish.
Oh, by the way, welcome to the call, Emily.
Emily.
We were just recapping on the tail end of 25, so you just made it in time for the next chapter.
Yeah. Good job. Okay, 26. We nuke all the fish. I had trekked through the wilderness of Jotunheim. I had lived on the streets of Boston. Somehow the swath of uncirculated circulated land behind the Alderman Manor seemed even more dangerous. Glancing behind us, I could still see the house's towers, peeking above the woods. I could hear traffic from the road. The sun shone down as glaringly cheerful as usual. As usual, but under the gnarled trees, the gloom was tenacious. The roots and rocks seemed determined to trip me. In the upper branches, birds and squirrels gave me the stink eye. It was as if this little patch of nature were trying doubly hard to stay wild in order to avoid getting turned into a tea garden. If I even see you bringing a croquet set up in here, the trees seem to say, I will make you eat the mallets. I appreciated the attitude, but it made our stroll a little nerve-wracking. Hearthstone seemed to know where he was going. The thought of Andrian and him playing in these woods as boys gave me new respect for their courage. After picking our way through a few acres of thorn bushes, we emerged in a small clearing with a cairn,
Cairn. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Cairn
Cairn. Yep.
of stones in the center. What is that? I asked. Hearthstone's expression was tight and painful, as if he were still forging through the braer. He signed the well, the mel, the melhol, the mel, the melhol,
Melancholy.
the melancholy of the place seeped into my pores. This was the spot where his brother had died.
Oh.
Mr. Alderman must have filled in the well, or maybe he had forced Hearthstone to do it after he finished skinning the evil creature. The act had probably earned Hearth a couple of gold coins. I circled my fist over my chest, the sign for I'm sorry. Hearth stared at me as if this sentiment did not compute. He knelt next to the cairn and picked up a small flat stone from the top. Engraved on it in dark red was a rune, and it's a fish. It looks like a fish.
You guys see this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Othala, inheritance. Othala, inheritance. The same symbol Randolph's little girl Emma had been clutching in my dream. Seeing it in real life, I felt seasick all over again. My face burned with the memory of Randolph's scar. I recalled what Loki had said in the wit's tomb. Blood is a powerful thing. I can always find you through him. For a second, I wondered if Loki had somehow put the rune here as a message for me, but Hearthstone didn't seem surprised to find it. I knelt next to him and signed, "Why is that here?" Hearthstone pointed to himself. He set the stone carefully back on top of the pile. "Means home," he signed, "or what is important. Inheritance." He considered for a moment, then nodded. "I put it here when I left, years ago. This rune I will not use. It belongs with him." I stared at the pile of rocks. Were some of these the same ones that 8-year-old Hearthstone had been playing with when the monster attacked his brother? This place was more than a memorial for Adrian. Part of Hearthstone had died here too. I was no magician, but it seemed wrong for a set of rune stones to be missing one symbol. How could you master a language, especially the language of the universe, without all the letters? I wanted to encourage Hearth to take back the rune. Surely Adrian would want that. Harth had a new family now. He was a great sorcerer. His cup of life had been refilled, but Hearthstone avoided my eyes. It's easy not to heed someone when you're deaf. You simply don't look at them. He rose and walked on, gesturing for me to follow. A few minutes later, we found the river. It wasn't impressive, just a swampy creek like the one that mended through
Yeah.
meandered through the Fenway greenbelt. Clouds of mosquitoes hovered over marsh grass. The ground was still warm bread pudding, like warm bread pudding. We followed the current downstream through thick patches of bramble and bog up to our knees. The, the thousand-year-old dwarf Endivari had picked a lovely place to retire. After last night's dreams, my nerves were raw. I kept thinking about Loki bound in his cave, in his appearance to Alex Furio. Furio, Furio's sweet. It's such a simple request. If that had actually happened, what did Loki want? I remember the assassin, the goat killer, who liked to possess flight instructors. He'd told me to bring Alex to Jotunheim. She is now your only hope for success. That did not bode well. 3 days from now, the giant Thrime expected a wedding. He wouldn't want his bride, as well as a bride price of the Scuffnog sword in stone, huh?
Nothing. I think it was just
Echo.
reception or something. Yeah.
It was Echo. Scuffnog sword in stone. In exchange, maybe we would get back Thor's hammer and prevent hordes of Jotunheim from invading Boston. I thought about the thousand giants I'd seen in my dream, marching into battle to challenge Thor. I wasn't anxious to face such a force, not without a big hammer that could explode mountains of and fry invading armies into sizzly bits. I guessed what Hearth and I were doing now made sense. Trudging through Alfheim, trying to retrieve gold from some old dwarf so we could get the Scuffenung sword and heal Blitz. Still, I felt as if Loki was intentionally keeping us sidetracked, not giving us time to think. He was like a point guard, waving his hands in our faces, distracting us from shooting for the net. There was more to this wedding deal than getting Thor's hammer back. Loki had a plan within a plan. He recruited my uncle Randolph for some reason. If only I could find a moment to gather my thoughts without being pulled from one life-threatening problem to another. Yeah, right. You have just described your entire life in Afterlife, Magnus. I tried to tell myself everything would be fine. Unfortunately, my esophagus didn't believe me. It kept yo-yoing up and down from my chest to my teeth. The first waterfall we found was a gentle trickle over a mossy ledge. Open meadows stretched out on either bank. The water wasn't deep enough for a fish to hide in. The meadows were too flat to conceal effective traps like poison spikes, land mines, or tripwires that launched dynamite or rabid rodents from catapults. No self-respecting dwarf would have hidden his treasure here. We kept walking. The second waterfall had potential. The terrain was rockier, with lots of slippery moss and treacherous crevices between the boulders on either bank. The overhanging trees shaded the water and provided ample potential hiding places for crossbows or guillotine blades. Guillotine blades. The river itself cascaded down a natural stairwell of rock before tumbling 10 feet into a pond, the diameter of a trampoline, with all the turning froth and ripples I couldn't see below the surface, but judging from the dark blue water, it must have been deep. There could be anything down there, I told Hearth. How do we do this? Hearthstone gestured toward my pendant. Be ready. Okay. I pulled off my runestone and summoned Jack. Hey guys, he said. Whoa, we're in Alfheim. Did you bring sunglasses for me? Jack, you don't have eyes. I reminded him. Yeah, but still, I look great in sunglasses. What are we doing? I told him the basics while Hearthstone rummaged through his bag of runestones, trying to decide which flavor of magic to use on a dwarf/fish. Indavari, Jack said. Oh, I've heard of that guy. You can steal his gold, but don't kill him. That would be really bad luck. Meaning what exactly? Swords could not shrug. But Jack tilted from side to side, which was his closest equivalent. I don't know what would happen. I just know it's right up there on the things you don't do list, along with breaking mirrors, crossing paths with Freya's cats, and trying to kiss Frigg under the mistletoe. Boy, I made that mistake once. I had the horrible feeling Jack was about to tell me the story. Then Hearthstone raised a runestone over his head. I just had time to recognize the symbol. John?
Yep.
Like the hat. Sideways hat.
Yeah.
Thurisaz.
Thurisaz.
The rune
Thor.
of Thor. Hearthstone slammed it into the pond. Kablam! Water vapor coated my sunglasses. The atmosphere turned to pure steam and ozone so fast my sinuses inflated like car airbags. I wiped off my lenses where the pond had been. A huge, muddy pit went down 30 feet. At the bottom, dozens of surprised fish flailed around, their gills flapping. Whoa, I said. Where did the water fall? Where did the water fall? ... question mark. I looked up. The river arched over our heads like a liquid rainbow, bypassing the pond and crashing into the riverbed downstream. Hearth, how the heck? He turned to me, and I took a nervous step back. His eyes blazed with anger. His expression was scarier and even less Hearth-like than when he'd Yurzed himself into Oxel. What was that word, John?
Uruzed.
Arused himself into Oxel. You just saying, man. I raised my hands. You nuked about 50 innocent fish. One of them is a dwarf, he signed. He jumped into the pit his boots sinking into the mud. He wadded around, pulling out his feet in deep sucking noises. Examining each fish above me, the river continued to arc through midair, roaring and glittering in the sunlight. Jack, I said, what does the Tharusa's rune do? It's the rune of Thor, senor. Hey, Thor, senor. That rhymes. Yeah, great. But why did the pond go boom? Why is Hearthstone acting so weird? Oh, because Thursaz is the rune of destructive force, like Thor, blowing stuff up. Also, when you invoke it, you can get a little Thor-like. Thor-like, just what I needed now. I really didn't want to jump into that hole if Hearthstone started farting like the Thunder God. In the air, in God, Thunder God, the air down there was going to get toxic real fast. On the other hand, I couldn't leave those fish at the mercy of an angry elf. Sure, they were just fish, but I didn't like the idea of so many dying just so we could weed out one disguised dwarf. Life was life. Life was life. I guess it was a Frey thing. I also figured Hearthstone might feel bad about it once he shook off the influence of Thurisaz. Jack, stay here, I said. Keep watch. Which would be easier and cooler with sunglasses, Jack complained. I ignored him and leaped in. At least Hearth didn't try to kill me when I dropped down next to him. I looked around, but saw no sign of treasure, no X's marking the spot, no trap doors, just a bunch of gasping fish. How do we find Endivari? I asked. I signed. The only fish need the other fish need water to breathe. We wait, Hearth signed. Dwarf will suffocate too unless he changes form. I didn't like that answer. I crouched and rested my hands on the mud, sending out the power of Frey through the slime. In the muck. I know that sounds weird, but I figured if I could heal with a touch, in intuition,
Intuiting.
intuiting everything that was wrong inside someone's body, maybe I could extend my perception a little more. The same way you might squint to see further and sense all the different life forms around me. It worked more or less. My mind touched the cold panic con-
Consciousness.
consciousness of a trout flopping a few inches away. I located an eel that had burrowed into the mud and was seriously considering biting Hearthstone in the foot. I convinced him not to. I touched the tiny minds of guppies whose entire thought process was eek, eek, eek. Then I sensed something different. A groper, a
Grouper.
grouper whose thoughts were racing a little too fast, but he was calculating escape plans. I snatched him up with my inhardy reflexes. The grouper yelled, "Gah!" Andavari, I presume. Nice to meet you. Let me go, wailed the fish. My treasure is not in this pond, actually. I don't have a treasure. Forget I said that. Hearth, how about how about we get out of here? I suggested. Let's let the pond fill up again. The fire suddenly went out of Arsenal's eyes. He staggered from above. Jack yelled, Magnus, you might want to hurry. The rune magic was fading.
Oh
The
crap.
the arc of water started to dissolve, breaking into droplets, keeping one hand tight on my captive grouper, I wrapped my other arm around Hearthstone's waist and leaped straight up with all my strength. Come on. Kids, do not try this at home. I'm a trained Inharji who died a painful death, went to Valhalla, and now spends most of his time arguing with a sword. I am a qualified professional who can jump out of 30-foot deep muddy holes. You, I hope, are not. I landed on the riverbank just as the waterfall collapsed back into the pond. Granting, all the little fishies are a very wet miracle and a story to tell their grandchildren. The grouper tried to wiggle free. Let me go, you scoundrel. Counter proposal, I said. Inavari, this is my friend Jack, the Sword of Summer. He can cut through almost anything. He sings pop songs like a demented angel. He can also fillet a fish faster than you would believe. I'm about to ask Jack to do all of those things at once. Or you can turn into your normal form, slow and easy, and we can have a chat in two blinks. In 2 blinks, instead of holding a fish, my hand was wrapped around the throat of the oldest, slimiest dwarf I'd ever seen.
Ugh.
It was so disgusting that the fact I didn't let go should have proven my bravery and got me into Valhalla all over again. Congratulations, the dwarf croaked. You got me. And now you're gonna get a tragic demise.
You mind
Chapter
if I read the next one?
What?
What? Give you a quick break.
You don't I'm gonna get a drink anyway.
Yeah.
So
You don't you don't want me to? Okay.
no, I'm only gonna get a drink and then I'm gonna read again.
Well, I could read for a little bit.
If you want, well, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I do. I'm following it.
Well, you're following it, but you don't know half of what happened on the 26th, on the 22.
Yeah, I know, but I got this.
Okay. All right, chapter 27. I'll read it. I'll get the chapter done.
Yeah.
27. Let me go immediately, or I will make you a billionaire. Take it away, John.
Ooh, a demise. Normally, I am not threatened with a demise. Most folks in the 9 worlds don't use fancy words like that. They just say, "I'ma kill you," or they let their chainmail wrapped fist do the talking. I was so impressed with Andvari's vocabulary, I squeezed his throat tighter. Ack! The dwarf thrashed and wriggled. He was slippery, but not heavy. Even by dwarf standards, the dude was tiny. He wore a fish skin tunic and underwear that was basically a moss diaper. Slime coated his limbs, his stubby arms hammered away at me, but it didn't feel any worse than getting hit with Nerf bats. And his face, well, you know how your thumb looks after it's been under a wet bandage too long, all wrinkly and discolored and gross? Imagine that as a face with some scraggly white whiskers and mold green eyes, and you've got Andvari. Where's the gold? I demanded. Don't make me unleash my sword's playlist. Andvari writhed even more. You fools don't want my gold. Don't you know what happens to people who take it? They get rich, I guessed. No. Well, yes, but after that they die, or at least they want to die. They always suffer, and so does everyone around them. He wiggled his slimy fingers like, woo, threatening. Hearthstone was listening slightly to port, but he managed to stay on his feet. He signed, "One person stole gold, no consequences." Then he made my least favorite name sign, index finger and thumb pinched together at the side of his beard. Combination of the letter L.
You mean head?
Yeah, at the side of his head. A combination of the letter L and the sign for devil, which fit our friend Loki just fine. Loki took your gold once, I interpreted, and he didn't die or suffer. Well, yeah, but that's Loki, Andvari said. Everybody else who got the gold after him, they went crazy. They had horrible lives, left a trail of dead bodies. Is that what you want? You want to be like Fafnir, Sigurd, the Powerball lottery winners? Wait, what? The who? Oh, come on. You've heard the stories. Every time I lose my ring, it bounces around the 9 worlds for a while. Some schmuck gets a hold of it. They win the lottery and make millions, but they always end up broke, divorced, sick, unhappy, and or dead. Is that what you want? Hearth signed magic ring. Yes, that's the secret of his wealth. We need that. You mentioned a ring, I said. Andvari went still. Did I? Nope. Must have misspoken. No ring. Jack, I said, how do his feet look to you? Real bad, senor. They need a pedicure. Do it.
Do it.
Jack flew into action. It's a rare sword that can remove caked on pond scum, shave off calluses, trim gnarly toenails, and leave a pair of dwarf feet shiny clean without 1, killing said dwarf, 2, cutting off the flailing feet of said dwarf, or 3, cutting off the legs of the Enharji who is holding said dwarf, and all the while singing, Can't Feel My Face. Jack is truly special.
All right. All right.
All right, Andvari shrieked. No more torture. I'll show you where the treasure is. It's right under that rock. He pointed frantically to pretty much everything until his finger came to rest at a boulder near the edge of the waterfall. Traps, Hearthstone signed. Andvari, I said, if I move that boulder, what sort of traps will I spring? None. What if I move it using your head as a lever, then? All right, it's booby-trapped, exploding hexes, tripwires to catapults. I knew it, I said. How do you disarm them? All of them. The dwarf squinted with concentration. At least I hope that's what he was doing. Otherwise, he was making a deposit in his moss diaper. It's done.
It's done.
He sighed miserably. I've disarmed all the traps. I glanced at Hearthstone. The elf stretched out his hands, probably testing our surroundings for magic the way I could sense eels and guppies. Hey, we all have different talents. Hearth nodded. Safe. With Andvari still dangling from my hand, I walked to the boulder and flipped it over with my foot. Enharji's strength is also a good talent. Under the rock, a canvas-lined pit was filled with, wow. I didn't usually care about money. I'm not about that, but my saliva glands went into overdrive when I saw the sheer volume of gold, bracelets, necklaces, coins, daggers, rings, cups, Monopoly tokens. I wasn't sure what the value of gold per ounce was these days, but I estimated I was looking at about a gajillion dollars worth, give or take a bazillion. Jack squealed. Oh, look at those little daggers. They're adorable. Hearthstone's eyes regained their alertness. All that gold seemed to have the same effect on him as waving a cup of coffee under his nose. Too easy, he signed. Must be a catch. Andvari, I said, if your name means careful one, why are you so easy to rob? I know, he sobbed. I'm not careful. I get robbed all the time. I think the name is ironic. My mother was a cruel woman. So this hoard keeps getting stolen, but you keep getting it back? Because of that ring you mentioned. What ring? Lots of rings in that pile. Take them. No, the super magic one. Where is it? Probably in the pile somewhere. Go look. Andvari quickly pulled a ring off his finger and slipped it into his diaper. His hands were so filthy I wouldn't have noticed the ring at all if he hadn't tried to hide it. You just dropped it down your pants, I said. No, I didn't. Jack, I think this dwarf wants a full Brazilian waxing. No! Andvari wailed. All right, yes, my magic ring is in my pants, but please don't take it. Getting it back is always such a hassle. I told you it's cursed. You don't want to end up like a lottery winner, do you? I turned to Hearth. What do you think? Tell him, Mr. Elf, said Andvari. You're obviously an elf of learning. You know your runes. I bet you know the story of Fafnir, eh? Tell your friend this ring will bring you nothing but trouble. Hearth gazed into the distance as if reading a list on some heavenly whiteboard. 10 gold for bringing home a cursed ring, plus 10 kajillion gold for stealing a kajillion gold. He signed. Ring is cursed, but also key to treasure. Without ring, treasure will never be enough. We'll always come up short. I looked at the jacuzzi-sized stash of gold. I don't know, man. That seems like plenty to cover your War Guild rug.
War Guild.
Yeah, War Guild. Hearth shook his head. it will not be. Ring is dangerous, but we have to take it just in case. If we don't use it, we can return it. I twisted the dwarf to face me. Sorry, Andvari. Jack laughed. Hey, that rhymes too.
What did the elf
what-
say?
What did the elf say? Andvari demanded. I can't read those gestures. He waved his grubby hands, accidentally signing Donkey Waiter Pancake in ASL. I was losing patience with the old slime bucket, but I did my best to translate Hearth's message. Andvari's moss green eyes darkened. He bared his teeth, which looked like they hadn't been flossed since zombies inspired the Mayflower Compact. You're a fool then, Mr. Elf, he growled. The ring will come back to me eventually. It always does. In the meantime, it will cause death and misery to whoever wears it. And don't think it will solve your problems either. This won't be the last time you've have to come home. You've only delayed a much more dangerous reckoning. The change in Andvari's tone unnerved me even more than his change from grouper to dwarf. No more wailing or crying. He spoke with cold certainty, like a hangman explaining the mechanics of a noose. Hearthstone didn't look rattled. He wore the same expression he'd had at his brother's cairn, as if he was reliving a tragedy that had happened long ago and couldn't be changed. The ring, he signed. The gesture was so obvious even Andvari understood it. Fine, the dwarf glared at me. You won't escape the curse either, human. Soon enough, you'll see what comes of stolen gifts. The hairs on my arms stood up. What do you mean? He grinned evilly. Oh, nothing. Nothing at all. Andvari did the shimmy shake. The ring dropped out of the leg hole of his diaper. One magic ring, he announced, complete with curse. There's no way, I said, that I'm picking that up. Got it. Jack dove in and made like a spatula, scooping the ring out of the mud with the flat of his blade. Andvari watched wistfully as my sword played paddleball, flipping the ring from one side of his blade to the other. The usual deal? The dwarf asked. You spare my life and take everything I own? The usual sounds great, I said. What about all the gold in the pit? How do we carry it? Andvari scoffed. Amateurs. The canvas lining of the pit is a big magical sack. Pull the drawstring and voila. I have to keep the stash ready for quick getaways for those few times I avoid getting robbed. Hearthstone crouched next to the pit. Sure enough, poking from a hole in the hem of the canvas was a loop of string. Hearth pulled it and the bag snapped closed, shrinking to the size of a backpack. Hearth held it up for me to see, $1 gajillion worth of gold in a super convenient carry-on size. Now honor your part of the deal, Andvari demanded. I dropped him. Humph. The old dwarf rubbed his neck. Enjoy your demise, amateurs. I hope you have pain and suffering and win 2 lotteries. With that vile curse, he jumped back into the pond and disappeared. Hey, senor, called Jack. Heads up. Don't you dare. He flipped the ring at me. I caught it out of reflex. Ah, gross. Seeing as it was a magic ring, I half expected some big Lord of the Rings moment when it landed in my hand. Cold, heavy whispering, swirling gray mist, a line of Nazgul doing the Watusi. None of that happened. The ring just sat there, looking very much like a gold ring, albeit one that had recently fallen from a 1,000-year-old dwarf's moss diaper. I slipped the ring into my pant pocket, then studied the circle of slime residue on my palm. My hand will never feel clean again. Hearthstone shouldered his expensive new backpack like gajillionaire Santa Claus. He glanced at the sun, which was already past its zenith. I hadn't realized just how long we'd been trekking through the wilds of Mr. Alderman's backyard. We should go, Hearth signed. Father will be waiting.
28. And if you order now, you also get this cursed ring. Father was waiting, all right. He paced in the living room, sipping golden juice from the silver goblet, while Inge stood nearby, waiting for a spill to happen. When we walked in, Mr. Alderman turned toward us, his face a mask of cold anger. Where have you? His eyeless jaw, his
Isosceles.
his what?
Isosceles.
His isosceles jaw dropped. I guess he didn't expect to see us soaked in sweat, covered in grass and twigs, or slime-caked shoes leaving slug trails across his white marble floor. Mr. Alderman's expression was one of the best rewards I've ever gotten. Right up there was dying and going to Valhalla. Hearthstone plopped his canvas bag on the floor with a muffled clatter. He signed payment, palm up, brushing one finger toward his dad, like he was flicking a coin at him. The way Hearth did it made it look like an insult. I like that. Mr. Alderman forgot that he wasn't supposed to acknowledge sign language. He asked, payment? But how? Come upstairs and we'll show you. I glanced behind Alderman, where Inge stood wide-eyed, a grin slowly spreading across her face. We've got a demon skin rug to cover. Ah, the sound of golden Monopoly tokens cascading across a fur rug. There is nothing sweeter. I promise. I promise. You, Hearthstone, tripped over the canvas sack and walked around the rug, hosing it down with a torrent of wealth. Mr. Alderman's face got paler. In the doorway, Inge jumped up and down, clapping with excitement, heedless of the fact
Heedless.
heedless of the fact that she hadn't paid her master for the privilege. When the last of the gold was out, Hearthstone stepped back and threw down the empty bag. He signed, Wergold paid. Wergold paid. Mr. Alderman looked stunned. He did not say, good job, son, or oh boy, I'm richer. Or did you rob the elfish treasury department? He crouched and inspected the pile coin by coin, dagger by dagger. There are miniature dogs and steam trains, he noted. Why? I coughed. I think the previous owner liked board games. Soldier Gold board games.
Solid gold board games.
Solid Gold board games. Alderman continued his inspection, making sure that the entire rug was covered. His expression turned more and more sour. Did you leave the property to acquire this? Because I did not give you permission. Nope, I said. You own the wilderness behind the backyard, right? Yes, he does, In said. The master glared at her, and she hastily added, because Mr. Alderman is a very important man. Look, sir, I said it's obvious Hearthstone succeeded. The rug is covered. Just admit it. I will be the judge, he snarled. This is all about responsibility. Something you younger folks do not understand. You want Hearthstone to fail, don't you? Alderman scowled. I expect him to fail. There is a difference. This boy earned his punishment. I am not convinced he has the potential to pay it off. I almost screamed. Hearthstone has been paying his entire life. I wanted to
Oh, did you just mute yourself, buddy?
paying his entire life. I wanted to pour Andavari's treasure straight down Alderman's throat and see if that convinced him of his son's potential. Hearthstone brushed his fingers against my arm. He signed calm, ready with the ring. I tried to control my breathing. I didn't understand how Hearth could endure his father's insults. He'd had a lot of practice, sure, but the old elf was intolerable. I was glad Jack was back in pendant form, because I would have ordered him to give Mr. Alderman the full Brazilian treatment. In the pocket of my jeans, Andavari's ring was so light I could barely feel it. I had to resist the urge to check on it every few seconds. I realized that was one reason I felt so irritated with Mr. Alderman. I wanted him to say that the debt was paid. I didn't want Hearthstone to be right about needing the ring too. I kind of wanted to keep it. No, wait, that's not right. I wanted to return it to Enivari so we didn't have to deal with the curse. My thoughts on the subject were starting to get muddled, as though my head was full of river sludge. Ah, Mr. Alderman cried triumphantly. He pointed to the top of the rug at the nape of its neck, where the fur was thickest. A single blue hair sprouted from the treasure like a stubborn weed. Oh, come on, I said. That'll just take a minor adjustment. I shifted the treasure so the hair was covered, but as soon as I succeeded, another hair popped up from the spot where I'd taken the gold. It was like the same stupid blue hair was following me around, defying my efforts. This is no problem, I insisted. Let me get out my sword. Or if you have a pair of scissors. The debt is not paid, Mr. Alderman insisted, unless you can cover that last hair right now with more gold. I am going to charge you for disappointing me and wasting my time. Say, half this treasure? Hearthstone turned to me, no surprise to his face, just glum resignation.
Resignation.
The ring, a wave of murderous resentment washed over me. I didn't want to give up the ring, but then I looked at the whiteboards around the room, all the rules and menu items, all the expectations that Mr. Alderman expected Hearthstone not to meet. The curse of Enavari's ring was pretty strong. It whispered to me, telling me to keep it and get filthy rich. But the urge to see Hearthstone free of his father, reunited with Blitzen, and out of this toxic house, that was stronger. I brought out our secret last bit of treasure. A hungry light kindled kindled in Mr. Alderman's face. Alien eyes. Very well, place it on the pile. Father, Hearthstone signed, warning the ring is cursed. I will not listen to your hand gestures. You know what he's saying. I held up the ring. This thing taints whoever owns it. It'll ruin you. Heck, I've only had it for a few minutes, and it's already messing with my mind. Take the gold that's already on the rug. Call the debt paid. Show some forgiveness, and we'll return this ring to the previous owner. Mr. Alderman laughed bitterly. Forgiveness? What can I buy with forgiveness? Will I bring it? Will it bring Adrian back to me? Personally, I would have punched the old dude in the face, but Hearthstone stepped toward his father. He looked genuinely worried. Curse of Thufner. He signed, do not. Endavari had mentioned that name. It sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. Maybe Fefner was a Powerball lottery winner. Hearthstone gestured, please, hand flat against the chest, making a circle. It struck me that please was just a mirror. Gold, chest, making a circle. It struck me that please was just a more relaxed, less angry version of sorry. The two elves stared at each other, each across the pile of gold. I could almost feel Alfheim swaying in the branches of the world tree. Despite everything Alderman had done to him, Hearthstone still wanted to help his father. He was making one last effort to pull his dad out of a hole much deeper than Navari's. No, Mr. Alderman decided, pay the wergold or stay in my debt, both of you. Hearthstone bowed his head in defeat. He motioned at me to give up the ring. First, the Scuffenong stormed. Scuffnug stone, I said. Let me see that you're keeping your side of the bargain. Alderman grunted. Inge, bring me the Scuffnug stone. From its case, the security code is Greta. Hearthstone flinched. I guess Greta was his mother's name. The huddler scurried off. For a few tense moments, Hearthstone, Alderman, and I stood around the rug and stared at each other. No one suggested a game of Monopoly. No one yelled, Yippee! And jumped in the pile of gold. Though I'll admit, I was tempted. Finally, Inge came back, the blue-gray wet stone cupped in her hands. She offered it to Alderman with a courtesy. Alderman took it with a curtsy. Alderman took it and handed it to his son. I give this to you freely, Hearthstone, to do with as you please. Let its power be yours. He glowered at me. Now the ring. I was out of reasons to delay, but it was still difficult. With a deep breath, I knelt and added Andavari's ring to the treasure, covering the last bit of fur. The deal is done, I said. Ah, Alderman's gaze was fixed on the treasure. Yes, yes, except for one thing. You promised me media exposure, Magnus Chase. I have arranged a little party for tonight. Inge the Huddler jumped. Yes, sir. Preparations are coming along. With all 400 guests have RSVP'd. 400, I asked. How did you have time to set that up? How did you know we'd succeed? Ha! The crazy light in Mr. Alderman's eyes did not calm my nerves. I didn't know you'd succeed, and I didn't care. I didn't care. I planned in arranging parties every night while you stayed here, Magnus, preferably forever. But since you have paid the Wiggle so quickly, we'll have to make tonight count. As for how, I am Alderman of House Alderman. No one would dare turn down my invitation. Behind his back, Inge gave me a frantic nod and drew a line across her neck. And now, Mr. Alderman snatched the cursed ring out of the hoard. He placed it on his finger. He held it out to admire it, like someone newly engaged. Yes, this will look lovely with my formal attire, Hearthstone. I will expect you and your guest, Hearthstone. Where are you going? Apparently, Hearth had enough of his father. With the Stuffanung stone in one hand, he hauled Blitzen upright by the scarf harness and lugged him into the bathroom. A moment later, I heard the shower running. I should go help them, I said. What? Alderman snapped. Yes, fine. Such a lovely ring. And make sure our young scoundrels are dressed appropriately for the party. And send some of the staff to help me with the gold. I must have every piece of treasure weighed and counted and polished. It will look wonderful polished. And while you're at it, I didn't want to leave Inge alone in the same room with Mr. Crazy Ring, but I was getting nauseated watching Alderman flirt with his fortune. I ran to join my friends in the bathroom. The only thing more disturbing than a severed god's head in your bubble bath, a bleeding granite dwarf in your shower. Hearth propped Blitzen under the shower head. As soon as the running water cascaded over Blitz's head, the form began to soften. His cold gray face darkened into warm brown flesh. Blood flowed from his wounded gut and swirled around the drain. His knees buckled. I lurched into the stall to hold him up. Hearthstone fumbled with the scuffling sword. He pressed it against the gushing wounds, and Blitz gasped. The flow of blood stopped instantly. I'm a goner, Blitz croaked. Don't worry about me. You crazy elf. He spit out water. Why is it raining? Hearthstone hugged him fiercely, crushing Blitz's face against his chest. Hey, Blitz complained. Can't breathe here. Hearth, of course, couldn't hear him and didn't seem to care. He rocked back and forth with the dwarf in his arms. Okay, buddy, Blitz patted him weakly. There. He looked up at me and silently asked several thousand questions, with his eyes including, why are the three of us taking a shower together? Why am I not dead? Why do you smell like pond scum? What is wrong with my elf? Once we were sure he'd fully unpetrified, Hearth shut off the water. Blitz was too weak to move, so we slid him into a sitting position right there in the shower. Inge rushed into the bathroom with a stack of towels and some fresh clothes. From Hearth's bedroom came the sound of spilling coins, like a dozen slot machines paying out, punctured by the occasional crazy laugh. What was that word?
Punctuated. So
Punctuated.
it sounded like a dozen slot machines paying out, punctuated by the occasional crazy laugh.
You might want to take your time in here, Inge warned us, glancing nervously behind her. It's a bit hectic out there. Then she left, closing the door behind her. We did our best to get ourselves cleaned up. I used an extra belt to make a strap for the scuffling sword, sewn, and tied it around my waist, tucking my shirt over it so it wouldn't be too obvious if Mr. Alderman got a case of takesy backsies. Blitzen's wound had closed nicely, leaving just a small white scar, but he bemoaned the damage to his suit. But he bemoaned the damage of his suit. The sword slashed in the vest, the heavy bloodstains, no amount of lemon juice. We'll get these out, he said. Once fabric turns to granite and back again, well, the discoloration of permanent. The discoloration is permanent. I didn't bother pointing out that at least he was alive. I knew he was in shock and dealing with it by concentrating on things he understood and could fix, such as his wardrobe. We sat together on the bathroom floor. Blitzen used his mending kit to stitch together bath towels for extra Alphaheim sun protection, while Hearthstone and I took turns filling him in on what had happened, what was happening, what had been happening. Blitzen shook his head in amazement. You did all that for me? You crazy, wonderful idiots. You could have gotten yourselves killed. In Hearth, you subjected yourself to your father. I never would have asked you to do that. You swore you'd never come back here, and for good reason. I also swore to protect you, Hearth signed. My fault. You were stabbed. In Samara's. Stop that right now, Blitz said. It wasn't your fault, or hers. You can't cheat a prophecy. That mortal wound was bound to happen. But now you've fixed it, so we can stop worrying about it. Besides, if you want to blame someone, blame that fool Randolph. He glanced at me. No offense, kid, but I have a strong desire to murder your uncle with extreme prejudice. No offense taken, I said. I'm tempted to help you. And yet I remembered Randolph's horrified cry when he'd stabbed Blitzen, in the way he'd followed Loki like an abused dog. As much as I wanted to hate my uncle, I couldn't help feeling sorry for him. Now that I'd met Mr. Alderman, I was starting to realize that no matter how bad your family is, it could always be worse.
Yeah.
Parth finished bringing Blitzen up to spend the speed in sign language. Blitzen up to speed in sign language, explaining how we'd robbed Andavari and been threatened with multiple Powerball jackpots. You were both out of your minds to face that dwarf, Blitzen said. He's infamous in Nidvalir, even craftier and greedier than Itri Jr. What is that word? Itri?
Eatri Jr.
Itri Jr. Could we please not mention him? I pleaded. I still had nightmares about the old dwarf who had challenged Blitz to the crafting contest last January. I never wanted to see another rocket-powered granny walker as long as I lived. Blitzen frowned at Hearth. And you say your father has the ring now? Hearthstone nodded. I tried to warn him. Yes, but still, that thing can wrap its owner's mind beyond recognition.
Can warp its owner's mind.
Can warp into its owner's mind beyond recognition. After what happened to Heridimar, Fefner, Region, and all those lottery winners, well, there's an endless list of people that ring what has destroyed. Who are they? I asked. Those people you mentioned. Blitzen out held up his bath towel creation, a sort of terry cloth, burqa, and sunglasses taped over the eye holes. Long, tragic story, kid. Lots of death. The important thing is we must convince Mr. Alderman to give up the ring, give up that ring before it's too late. We have to stay at this party for a while, right? That'll give us a chance. Maybe he'll be in a good mood and we can make him see sense. Hearthstone grunted. My father? Doubtful. Yeah, I said. And if he won't see sense, then we run, Blitz said. And we hope Alderman doesn't. From the next room, Inge called, Mr. Hearthstone? Her tone verged on panic. We stumbled out of the bath and found that Hearth's bedroom had been completely stripped. The mattress was gone. The whiteboards had been removed, leaving bright white shadows on only slightly less white walls. The pile of treasure in the blue fur rug had vanished as if the Wergold had never happened, and stood in the doorway, her bonnet askew on her head. Her face was flushed, and she was anxiously pulling tufts from the end of her tail. Master Hart, the guests have arrived. The party has started. Your father is asking for you, but Hearthstone signed. What's wrong? Inge tried to speak. No words came out. She shrugged hopelessly, as if she could describe the horrors she had witnessed. At Mr. Alderman's mixed and mingle, it's probably best you see for yourself.
Uh-oh.
Chapter 29, Nook Nook. And I think we're gonna leave it at that.
You're gonna stop here?
I think so. I'm at 15% anyway, or 10% on my phone.
Okay.
I mean, I know it was a short one, but I would have loved to.
Yeah, these are some longer chapters.
Yeah. Well, this one's not as long, but it is kind of long, but it has a lot to do and stuff. I mean, I could plug you guys in. No charger. I could keep going.
Man,
Or at least you're not that sick with it.
I say it's up to you, Dennis. I'm good with listening to more.
Yeah,
Huh?
it's up to you, Dennis.
Well, no, I'm gonna. Yeah, I gotta play you in then. Because I'm at 10% on my phone.
Oh, plug it in, Dennis.
plug it in, plug it in.
I was just gonna do that.
You want me to like read a little bit and then hand it off to you, dude?
No, I'm already ready.
All right.
I think. You guys hear me still?
Yep.
Yep.
So this chapter, knock knock, is NOKK NOKK.
Yep. And there's a slash through the O. Alderman knew how to throw a party. He also knew how to throw things at a party. From the top of the staircase, we gazed down at a living room jammed with well-groomed elves in elegant white gold and silver outfits. Their pale eyes, fair hair, and expensive jewelry gleamed in the evening sunlight, streaming through the windows. Dozens of hustler servants moved through the crowd, offering drinks and hors d'oeuvres,
Hors d'oeuvres.
and adores. No, wait, hold on. Moved through the crowds, offering drinks and hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah, hors d'oeuvres, like fancy little.
Order. And in all the cases and niches where artifacts and minerals were once displayed, piles of Anvari's treasure glittered, making the whole room look like jewelry warehouse after a tornado. Above the fireplace mantle, across the foot of Adrian's portrait, hung a golden banner with red letters. Welcome Magnus Chase, son of Frey, sponsored by House Alderman. And under that, in smaller print, Hearthstone has been brought back. Not returned and brought back. As if the elfish marshal service had apprehended him and hauled him home in chains. Alderman himself circulated through the crowd at double speed, tossing gold coins in his guests, accosting them with
Accosting, yeah.
and muttering, "Can you believe all this treasure? Amazing, isn't it? Would you like a golden choo-choo train? May I interest you in a dagger?"
He's just throwing the treasure to his friends.
In his white tuxedo, with his wild eyes and brilliant smile, he looked like a diabolical
Maitre d'.
maitre d' seating parties at Ches mass murder.
J mass murder.
Ches mass murder, yeah.
Must be a
His
fan.
guests laughed nervously as he threw treasure at them. Once he passed, they muttered to one another, perhaps wondering how soon they could flee the party without seeming impolite. Alderman wove through the room, distributing golden trinkets, and the crowd moved away from him, like cats avoiding an out-of-control Roomba. Behind us, Inge murmured, "Oh dear, he's getting worse." Hearthstone sighed. "The ring is affecting him." I nodded, though. I wondered how strained Mr. Alderman's sanity had already been. For decades, he had been living off resentment, blaming Hearthstone for Adrian's death. Now, suddenly, Hearthstone had freed himself from that debt. Andvari's ring simply moved in to fill the void, with a whole bunch of crazy. Blitzen gripped the staircase with his gloved hands. This isn't good. He was wearing his bath towel burqa to protect himself from the Alfheim light. He'd explained to us that his usual pith helmet, netting, and sunscreen would not be sufficient, as he was still weak from petrification. Still, the outfit was a little disturbing. He looked like a miniature version of cousin It from the Addams Family. Ah, Mr. Alderman spotted us on the stairs and grinned even wider. Behold, my son and his companions, the dwarf, at least I assume that's the dwarf under those towels, and Magnus Chase, son of Frey. The crowd turned and looked up at us, emitting a fair number of oohs and ahs. I've never liked being the center of attention. I hated it at school, and later in Valhalla, I hated even more these glamorous elves ogling me like I was a delectable chocolate fountain that had just opened for business. Yes, Mr. Alderman crackled like a maniac. All this treasure you see, my friends, this is nothing compared to Magnus Chase. My son finally did something right. He brought me a child of Frey as part of his Wigard payment. And now, this boy, Magnus Chase, will be my permanent house guest. We will
What?
start, yeah, permanent house guest. We will start a line for photo ops at the bar. Hold up, I said. That was not the deal. Alderman, we're not staying past this party. Hearthstone signed, Father the Ring, dangerous, take it off. The crowd stirred restlessly, not sure what to make of this. Alderman's smile eroded. His eyes narrowed. My son is asking me to take off my new ring. He held up his hand and wiggled his finger, letting the gold band catch the light. Now, why would he ask that? And why would Magnus Chase threaten to leave? Unless these scoundrels are planning to steal my treasure. Blitzen scoffed. They just brought you that treasure, you daft elf. Why would they steal it again? So you admit it, Alderman clapped his hands. All the doors to the living room slammed shut around the perimeter of the room. A dozen columns of water erupted from the floor and formed vaguely humanoid shapes like balloon animals.
Vaguely humanoid shapes.
Yeah, vaguely humanoid shapes like balloon animals filled with water, minus the balloons. Listen, yo, those are security knocks. What I asked, also called nixies, I said, water spirits, bad news.
Uh-oh.
Caught In's arm. He signed, you still have family in woods? Yes, she said. Go now, he said. I release you from my family's service. Don't come back. Also, call police. In looked stunned and hurt, but then she glanced at this water spirit surrounding the crowd below. She pecked Hearthstone on the cheek. I love you. She vanished in a puff of fresh laundry scented smoke. Blitzen arched his eyebrows. Did I miss something? Hearthstone shot him an irritated look, but he didn't have time to explain. Down in the living room, the older elf shouted, Alderman, what is the meaning of this? The meaning, Lord Mayor, Alderman grinned with an intensity that was not at all sane. I now understand why you all came here. You meant to steal my treasure, but I've caught you gold-handed. Security knocks. Subdue those thieves. No one leaves here alive.
Holy crap. He's gone off the deep end.
See why I wanted to stop where I still wanted?
Yeah, he's gone crazy. Etiquette tip.
Etiquette tip. If you're looking for the right time to leave a party, when the host yells, "No one leaves here alive," that's your cue. Yeah, exactly. Elves screamed and ran for the exits, but the glass doors were shut fast. Security nixies moved through the crowd, changing shape from animal to human, like two solid wave enveloping the elves. One by one, and leaving them passed out on the floor in elegant wet lumps. Meanwhile, Alderman laughed and danced around the room, retrieving his gold trinkets from his fallen guests. "We've got to get out of here now," Blitzen said. "But we need to help the elves," I said. True, with the exception of Hearthstone, I didn't think much of the elves I'd met. I liked the guppies in Endivari's pond more, but I also couldn't stand the idea of leaving 400 people at the mercy of Mr. Alderman and his liquid nixie thugs. I pulled out my pendant and summoned Jack. "Hey guys," Jack said, "what's going on?" Knocks. "Are you kidding me? There's nothing to cut with these guys." "Just do what you can," I yelled. Too late. Hearthstone signed violence. I wasn't sure if I had read that last sign correctly. Then I looked downstairs. Half the Nixies had stationed themselves around the room in humanoid form and were pulling out solid violins and bows from, well, somewhere inside their liquid selves. That seemed like a very bad place to store stringed instruments, but the Nixies raised the wooden violins to their watery chins.
Uh-oh.
"Ears," Blitz warned. I clamped my hands to the sides of my head just as the knocks began to play. It only helped a little. The dirge was so sad and dissonant, my knees wobbled, tears welled in my eyes. All around the room, more elves collapsed in fits of weeping, except Mr. Alderman, who seemed immune to. He kept cackling and skipping around, occasionally kicking his VIP guests in the face.
Oh my god.
From inside his terry cloth hood, Blitz let out a muffled yell. "Make it stop, or we'll die of broken hearts in a matter of minutes." I didn't think he was being metaphoric. Was that?
Metaphoric. Yeah.
Metaphoric. Thankfully, Hearthstone was not affected. He snapped his fingers for attention, then pointed at Jack. "Sword, cut violins." He heard him. I told Jack. "You heard him, Jack," I told Jack. "No, I didn't," Jack complained. "Kill the violins." "Oh, that would be a pleasure." Jack flew into action. Meanwhile, Hearthstone fished out a runestone. He tossed it from the top of the stairs, and it exploded in midair, making a giant glowing H shape above the heads of the elf. Johnny, want to show?
I mean, it's basically an H. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. This is like an H. Outside, the sky darkened. Rain hammered against the plate glass windows, drowning out the sounds of the violin. "Follow me," Hearthstone ordered. He clambered down the stairs as the storm intensified. Giant hailstones slammed into the windows, cracking the glass, causing the whole house to tremble. I pressed my hands to my waist, making sure the Scuffenung stone was still secure. Then I ran after Car. Jack flew from knock to knock, chopping up their violins and crushing the hopes and dreams of some very talented Nixie musicians. The water creatures lashed out at Jack. They didn't seem capable of hurting the sword any more than Jack could hurt them, but Jack kept them occupied long enough for us to reach the bottom of the stairs. Hearthstone paused and raised his arms. With a tremendous boom, every window and glass door in the house shattered. Hail swept in, pummeling the elves, Holder and Nixie's alike. Let's go, I yelled to the crowd. Come on, fools. Come on, fools, Alderman cried. You are mine, you cannot escape. We did our best to herd everyone into the yard. Being outside felt like running through a hurricane of baseballs. But it was better than dying surrounded by knock fiddlers. I wished I'd had the good sense of to cover myself in bath towels like Blitzen. Elves scattered and fled. The Nixies rushed after us, but the hail made them sluggish, slamming into them and forming ice froth until they looked like slushies escaped from their big gulp cups. We were halfway across the lawn, heading for the wilderness, when I heard the sirens out of the corner of my eye. I saw emergency lights flashing as police cars and ambulances pulled into the main drive. Above us, the dark clouds began to break up. The hail subsided. I caught Hearthstone as he stumbled. I almost thought we would make it to the woods when a voice behind us shouted, "Stop!" 50 yards away, our old friends, Officer Wildflower and Sunspot, had drawn their firearms and were preparing to shoot us for loitering, trespassing, or running away without permission. "Jack," I yelled. My sword rocketed toward the cops and sliced off their utility belts. Their pants promptly fell around their ankles. Elves, I discovered, should never wear shorts. They have pale, gangly legs that are not at all elegant or graceful. While they tried to recover their dignity, we plunged into the woods. Hearthstone's strength was nearly gone. He leaned on me as we ran, but I'd had a lot of practice carrying him. Jack flew to my side. That was fun, he announced. Afraid I just slowed them down, though. I'm sensing a good place to make a cut just up ahead. Make a cut? I asked. That he means between worlds, Blitzen said. I don't know about you, but to me, any of the other 8 would be preferable. Right about now. Preferable. Right about now. We staggered into the clearing where the old well had been. Hearthstone shook his head weakly. He signed with one hand, pointing in different directions. Anywhere but here. Blitzen turned to me. What is this place? It's where Hearth's brother, you know. Blitzen seemed to shrink under his mound of towels. Oh, it's the best spot, guys, Jack insisted. There's a real thin portal between the worlds right on top of that turn. Karen, I can. Behind us, a shout rang out. Everyone flinched except Hearthstone. Something buzzed past my ear like an annoying insect. Do it, Jack, I yelled. He raced to the cairn. His blade sliced through the air, opening a rift into absolute darkness. I love darkness, Blitzen said. Come on. Together we hauled Hearthstone toward Peas and Wells' old lair and jumped into the space between the worlds.
Wow.
30. Somewhere over the rainbow, there's some messed up stuff going on.
We'll have to start it up there next time.
Yep.
Dude,
The
Yeah.
that was crazy. So basically, they just left Dad with the cursed ring, and I'm pretty sure that dude is going to prison himself once they figure out what's going on.
Whoa, who?
He like imprisoned the mayor and all these VIP guests.
Oh yeah. Well, no, he's gonna die. I bet he's gonna die because of the ring.
Alderman, you think? Yeah.
Of course. He's got
Didn't
the
the
ring.
curse
He said-
say that it like turns him into some unknown creature or something like that? Not that it
just like-
kills him.
Completely like lusting after gold and
Well, yeah, because he's
Yeah.
because he's turning into Endeavor
yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
in a way, but then it.
He's
But then
lost all
Endeavor is gonna come
credibility.
back to kill him. Huh?
He's lost all credibility in the elven community. Like he just like sick Nixies on water sprites and Nixies on the mayor of the town. So I'm pretty sure like his reign as like the most important guy in town is going to end very shortly.
Right.
Then all he'll have is his treasure to console him.
So, I was gonna go back here in the very back of our book, and it says what everything is.
Yeah, I looked up Nook.
So I
And it
was
is
just like, so there's in the books it has like all the words and what they mean. It's in the
Yeah.
glossary,
It has a glossary, which is nice.
yeah, which is nice. And then he has after the glossary, he has all the pronunciation guide.
Nice.
Yeah,
And
so
then
it's
Yeah.
it's pronounced Nook. Nook.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
yeah, no.
Nook Nook.
So next week we'll start off with 30, and it says somewhere over the rainbow there's some messed up stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, they just left some messed up stuff behind, so at least they healed Blitzen, man.
Yeah,
Thank God.
That must have been rough.
I'll tell you, Hearthstone really loves that guy to go see his jerk of a father again. Yeah.
well, John, we're gonna read 22. What is it? 22 that we
Yeah, I'll catch up. I'll catch up with the one that I missed from last week.
Yeah, because you missed a lot of good stuff.
I'm sure I missed the majority of, his dad being a jerk to him and the whole go get the
Yeah,
treasure.
you definitely did.
Yeah.
Pretty sure Hearthstone's dad is a Cal abducting aliens was 22.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah,
But awesome job, man. Good reading tonight.
thanks.
Good job, Dennis.
Thank you.
Well, everyone have a safe and pleasant evening, and we will see you tomorrow. We will have science at 11:30, and we will be learning how cheese is made. Ooh,
Yay!
yeah, gotta love that cheese. It ain't easy being cheesy, so it'll be fun. And then later in the evening, we'll have our Friday Fun Night event.
What is that?
That is a good question, my friend.
Okay.
It is campfire night.
The cup.
Oh wait, hold on. I want to show something.
Yeah, it's campfire night, so we'll get to chat around the virtual campfire and tell stories.
Anybody see anything different?
Yeah, you got
Just
that
you.
baby, you got that baby face now. Shaved off the beard and mustache.
Yeah, unfortunately.
What do you mean, unfortunately? You look good, man. All right,
Hey,
guys. Well,
Mom.
yeah.
Per usual, John's getting a call.
Locksmith of New England, whatever that is about.
Oh, dude, locksmith? Did you ever get that?
Yeah.
They called me earlier. It was about my extended car warranty.
That's what we need.
Or your two.
Yeah, clearly a con call. If I don't know them, I don't pick up.
Yeah,
But-
same.
Anyways,
Together.
I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully, for how to make cheese and campfire night. And
Yes,
this
sir.
was awesome. We'll pick it up next week with chapter
I think some
30.
videos, John.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Thank you. All right, guys. Everybody take care. Have a good
Probably
night.
some
You
videos.
too.
too.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.